Hello everyone, welcome to lab number 12 of eDesign. This lab will focus on chapters number 9 and 11 from your parametric modeling with Autodesk Inventor textbook. We are skipping chapter number 10 for this class. That chapter focuses on design for 3D printing. If you're interested in that chapter, you can go ahead and do it on your own. But for this class, we will be skipping over it. As far as what we're going to go through, both of these chapters do involve modeling and drawing the part. If you do the walkthrough, what I'm going to go through with you is just the modeling part. When you go to turn it in on canvas, you will need to do both the 3D model and the drawing. Please make sure you turn in your Inventor files as well. If you're doing any hard copy prints, aka a PDF, please also turn in your Inventor part files and your drawing files, your .ipt and .dwg files. I do need all of those turned in on canvas. So we're going to start off chapter 9 by starting a new part. And we're going to start a new sketch, and we will put it on the XZ plane. Now I have it set to not immediately look at the sketch, so as you can see from my grid here, it is still in the isometric view, which is kind of what they've got in the book. We're going to start with just a 2-point rectangle. Again, there are several different ways you can do a rectangle. The default is the 2-point, so that's what would come up if you just click rectangle. And I'm going to put it somewhere near the center of the page. And I know you can continue sketching in this view. I prefer to look down on my sketch from the top, so I'm going to use the view cube to get that the way I want it. I'm going to put in the dimensions that they ask after I put the fillets in. So you can do fillets both in the sketch or in a 3D model. For this example, we're going to do them in the sketch. So this is your fillet, and I'm going to stick with the default option that they give us. If you click on the corner, it will do the whole corner for you, like on that point. Otherwise, you can click both of the sides that you want to fillet together. Either way works. It's a little quicker to just click the corners. And I'm done with filleting. And the reason I do the fillet first is just so you can see that when you put in the dimensions, you have to pay attention if you already have fillets, because if you dimension just this line, it's only doing it on the insides of the fillets, and the dimensions that they're giving you in the text are the dimensions of the full distance. So you can click, say, between the lines to get the outside distance. And again, here we will use the fact that we can use equations in our dimensions. So we've dimensioned the outside width here at 3 inches, and to make it halfway, we'll click the outside, and then I just click to the center point, the origin here, and we'll put equals 0.5 times and select that first dimension that we used. Now it's going to be centered horizontally. And we can do the same thing vertically. And again, if you have trouble clicking the origin point here when you're dimensioning, you can click your line and then click center point over here, or to any of the axes or the planes. You don't have to click it in your sketch if it's easier for you to click it over here in your tree. And again, we'll use that equation. That centers it. This is fully constrained. Now I'm going to put these circles that they have here. Actually, I'm going to also change the dimensions that they have for our fillets, because the default is 0.125, but we want these to be 1/4 inch fillets. And since we did that fillet all in one go, all 4 of those corners, just changing that dimension on the first one will change it for all 4 because they are linked. So that's kind of a nice feature there, so that we don't have to do it repeatedly. And then I'm going to make this also 1/4 inch. And you can do what I just did and type in the dimension every time, or you can just kind of not worry about the size exactly. Oh, I completely missed. I do want it centered on there. And then you can use your equal constraint to tell all of these circles to be equal. So I only had to dimension this one, and then if I ever need to change the dimensions, as long as I want them all to be the same, I only again have to change this one. So now this is fully constrained. We can finish that sketch. I'm going to hit F6 to bring it back to the home view. And we're going to extrude this a distance of 0.75, I believe. Yeah, 0.75 inches. Select that this is the feature that we want to extrude. It's going upward. That's great. And okay. Now the next thing that we're going to do that is new is creating a work plane. Since most of the things that we've done a sketch either on one of these existing planes or done a sketch on a plane, say a face of something that we have already created. Now we want to make something that is going to be on an angle that goes between these 2 holes, basically. So we want a plane that is on that angle. And there are several ways you can make a plane. There's a lot of different options here. If you just hit the plane button, it basically is going to ask you for some geometry to reference in creating this plane. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the XY plane as the first feature that we want to reference, and the Y-axis as another feature. That will automatically create a plane that is on an angle around the Y-axis on an angle from the XY plane. And we want it to be a 30-degree angle. And as you can see, that does travel right through the centers of those holes. That looks like what they're showing in the text, and I think we're good to go. Okay. And now, since we've created a work plane, we can create a sketch on that work plane. So I like to click the sketch, or the plane over here, or you can select it by clicking it. Either way. And then if you hit 2D sketch, it will automatically start the sketch on that plane. I'm going to change my view to a wireframe view, because that will keep the model from getting in the way of anything that we're trying to sketch, so that we can see through the model. And if I click shadows twice, it will turn them all off. And I'm going to go back into the sketch tab. I'm going to project the back edge onto this view. That just makes it so that we can see that line easily when we're trying to sketch. And then I'm going to get out of the project geometry. I just hit escape. Then I don't really want to draw it in this view. Again, like I said, I like to draw it where I'm looking flat on, but our view cube doesn't really give us an option for looking directly at a plane we just created. So the way we do that is you select that work plane, which again you can click it over here or click it in the tree, and then this button over here is the look at button, or you can use, as it shows you there, the page up button on your keyboard will do the same thing, but the look at will take whatever you have selected and turn your screen to face it. So now we're going to start drawing our next feature. And as they show in the book, I'm just kind of making sure that everything is perpendicular as I go, and I am not worrying about the exact sizing. I don't know why that line did not draw. And I'm going to connect these at the bottom. So now I have this kind of eye-shaped block, and all I really need to do now is dimension it. And again, I can use the, let's see, I'm going to make my axes visible. And the reason I do that is it's a little easier to dimension to them. Okay, and I want this to be centered. So again, I can use equations to center that. Now we are centered horizontally for that. And because of the way I drew them and made sure that they were aligned, these did move up and down together. If you need to dimension both sides separately, you can. It doesn't really matter. Or you can also, if you want them to line up, you can make them collinear or parallel. Parallel actually would not help you. You do want them to be collinear. So if your lines on either side are not yet collinear, if you use that constraint, that'll make them line up. And then I do need to dimension on both sides to get that. But now that is fully constrained, we do have a couple more features to add. We're going to add an arc at the top and a circle. So we're going to use the center point arc, and you want it at the center of this line. I find that sometimes it's kind of hard to get it to pick that center point. So I'm just going to make my arc start out here. It's kind of not attached to anything yet, but we'll use the coincident constraint. I'll choose that center point, and then if I hover over this top line, eventually it'll light up the center point of that line in green. And I'll select that. Now that arc is centered where I want it, and if you click on one of the ends, you can move it around wherever you want it. So I'm going to line up the end points of the arc with the end points of this line. Right now that's fully constrained, but I do want to get rid of this line. Now it's showing me that 2 dimensions are needed, because when I got rid of this line, this is no longer showing that it's tangent. So what I'm going to do, because this doesn't have that diameter anymore, is use the tangent constraint on both of these, and now it is showing fully constrained again. And then I will make a center point circle. We want the center of that circle at the same spot as the center of the arc, and make that 0.75 inches. So now everything is fully constrained. This is everything that we needed in our sketch. We'll finish it. Hit F6 to bring us back to our home view, and then I'm going to change my view back to a shaded view so we can see our whole piece here. I'm going to go into the 3D model, select that sketch I just created, and hit extrude. I want this to be symmetrically extruded, and the distance for that is going to be 1 inch. And select that. Okay. Now we're almost done. The last thing we need is a hole through the top. We're going to use another work plane to do that, because we only want the hole through the top. We don't want it to go all the way through the entire thing. So we're going to create a plane that is offset from this surface. So I'm going to choose offset from plane under our work plane options. I'll choose this top surface and make it 0.75 inches off of there. Now we have another plane that's kind of cutting right through our circle here. That's great. We're going to choose that plane and hit start sketch, and all we need is a small circle centered. So let's look at this from the top, and I am going to turn on my X and Z axis visibility. So if you select them over here, you can click X and Z. If you hold Control while you click those, it'll select them both. Right click, click visibility. Now those are visible. Let's make a circle at their intersection point. Now that dot will show up there. So how big do I want this? I think it's 1/4 inch. And you can't really see it because we are back in a realistic view instead of the wireframe. But if we hit F6 and go back here, we can see that circle does exist. Everything's fully constrained. You can finish that sketch and extrude and go through all, make it a cut, and it's going the wrong direction, which we can change by changing this to direction 1. Now it'll cut up through. Now at this point, I'm going to go into view options and object visibility. I don't want to see any axes anymore. I don't want to see any planes anymore from the origin. I also don't want to see my work planes anymore. So if I turn all of those off, now all I have to see is my part. That's the entire part that we need for Chapter 9. From this point on, the book will walk you through all of the drawing things that you need to do. So at the end of Chapter 9, you will turn in your drawing and this model. So all the drawing things are fairly basic. I don't feel there's anything that I need to walk through with you on that account. So we're going to move on to Chapter 11. We're skipping Chapter 10. And we're going to do the part for Chapter 11, which is going to show us some new things. So at this point, you will save your part file and start a drawing file. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to start a new part for Chapter 11. In this one, we're going to work with some new features like revolves and patterns and mirrors. So we're going to start a new sketch, and in this case we'll put it on the XY plane. And again, I'm going to turn to face that, so I'll use the front view. And we'll start by just kind of drawing the basic shape that they have there. And your shape doesn't have to be exactly what they've got on the page, because once you start adding dimensions, it will become what you need. So I'm going to start by making this line collinear with the y-axis. Now you can see it changed the shape, but that's okay, because as we add dimensions, it will get back to exactly the shape that we want it to be. So I'm going to start with my horizontal dimensions, which isn't necessarily how they do it in the text, but that's how I would like to do it right now. And then I will show you how they use, when you use the x-axis, we'll turn the visibility on for that. So we'll use this as our first point in all of our dimensions vertically. So if you select your x-axis here and then the bottom, now it's giving you a general dimension. Once you have it here, don't click yet, right click and click linear diameter. And what this does is basically sets up everything for you in terms of diameter, so that you can basically make this already set up to be a revolved feature. So actually I'm going to start with my largest dimensions first. So we're going to start at the outside. Always pick your rotational axis first, so in this case the x-axis first, and then whatever feature you want to dimension to. And I forgot to right click and make it a linear diameter, so diameter. And all of these dimensions are on page 11-9. And you can, when you're doing these dimensions, you can pick a point to dimension to. You don't have to pick, like we did at this point, a line. You can pick the point where that angle changes, and we'll right click, make it a linear diameter again. And finally, we'll get this one. The one that I forgot. So now you can see fully constrained, we have all of our dimensions in here. I like to have all of these arranged from largest to smallest. So, this feature is ready to be revolved. F6 to bring us home. Finish that sketch. And when we click revolve, right now you can choose your profile or axis. I'm going to choose the axis first and choose to revolve this around the x-axis, and it has already selected the profile that I have because that's the only thing that I have capable of being revolved, and it is currently set to a full revolve. There are other options if you were making a part that is not a full revolve, but in this case we do want it to be fully revolved, and then we can click OK. I'm going to turn off that visibility. Now at this point, if you look at it from the front, we have half of a pulley. So we want our full pulley. What we're going to do is mirror this image that we've already created, this part, this feature. So if we go up to the pattern options and click mirror, it's this one up here. First it wants to know what features, so we'll choose revolution 1 as the feature, and then what mirror plane. So you can choose the back of this piece. You can also choose the YZ plane. Either one will do the same thing. And it's showing us a preview of what we'll get when we're done. Click OK. And now we have our full pulley. Now we're going to make some features and show how we can do a pattern. So we're going to start a sketch on the YZ plane. I'm going to turn to face it, and for this all we need is a circle, and since we can't see it, I'm going to change my view again to wireframe. Now we can see that circle. And I want this to be a ½ inch circle. Then we're going to create a line between the center point of that circle and the origin point here. We're going to make this by right-clicking on it a construction line. Again, a construction line means that that line is used just for positioning to help us arrange our things, but it wouldn't be used in creating edges if we're doing something like a cut or an extrusion. So this line is just to help us arrange things. And we are going to dimension this to, let's see, actually I'm going to turn on, I think it's the Z-axis visibility here, yeah. So we will dimension this, and if you click on a line that's at an angle to another line, it will automatically make it an angle for you. So we're going to dimension this to 30 degrees, and what else do we need to know? Well, we'll make a construction circle. So if we create a circle centered and click the center point of that first circle that we drew, now we can get out of the circle command. I just hit escape, right click on that circle, and again make that a construction feature. That will allow us to, when we make the diameter of that circle, tell us how far from the center point the center of that our actual circle is. we'll make that 2.5 inches. That's an easy way we could add more features on the circle if we wanted to. It wouldn't matter where on the circle our hole is, because anywhere it would be the same distance from center. So now we are fully constrained. We'll finish this. And we're going to make this sketch into a hole by extruding as a cut. And we're going to do it symmetrically through all. Now if we turn back our view to a shaded view, we can see that hole a little better. Now our book also shows us that you can make changes to the placement of that hole. We're going to edit the sketch and we're going to change the angle to 90 degrees. And when we hit finish sketch, it has changed the placement of that hole. Now it's centered at the top of our pulley. Now we're going to use a circular pattern feature to make the rest of the holes. So that's up in this section, circular pattern. We first pick which features we want to pattern. So it's going to be this extrusion that is the hole. Then we choose our axis, and we want to do that around the x-axis. And how many we want and how many degrees around. So if we do it at 360 degrees, that will make it that will evenly arrange our features no matter how many we did. So if we change it to 7 or 8 or 9, it's evenly arranging them around the circle. But in this case, we want that to be 5. Hit OK, and we've got our 5 holes around the center of our pulley. Now at this point, again, the book will have you do your drawing. So you'll save this file and then make a new drawing from this part that we've just created. And when you turn it in on Canvas, I do want you to turn in the part files and the drawing files. If you've got any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a good week.